Good evening to you all. My name is Darry Everett, and I'm the proud franchise owner for Martin & Co covering Colchester and Ipswich postcodes. I've been running the business for 22 years now, and I'm delighted to have the benefit of 9 of my experienced staff that have come with me tonight, who between them have got 78 years experience working in my business with me, so I'm very proud of them and what they've done. A very warm welcome to all of you landlords and guests who have taken your time out this evening to join us at Wivenhoe Park to understand the Renters' Rights Bill and how it may affect you and your tenants. The bill is currently going through Parliament, and our Managing Director, Uncle Eric, to my left here, will be explaining to you in great detail how it's likely to pan out when the bill is finally approved, which should be later this year. We've got a total of 3 industry expert speakers on hand this evening who will explain that by trusting Martin & Co, we'll be able to keep you in safe hands now, next year and in the future. A bit of background, Martin & Co have got a network of over 150 branches, and we manage over 78,000 rental properties in the UK. We move over 55,000 families every year into new homes. We let a property every 4 minutes of the working day, and we sell a property every 8 minutes of the working day. So just a few housekeeping tips for this evening. If anyone does need a comfort break during the presentations, there are toilets out of the entrance door here to the right, and there's further underneath the stairs a little bit further on. If anyone's feeling dehydrated, we've got water on all of the tables, and I hope you've all enjoyed the canapes that we've set out. I'm now going to introduce our 3 speakers who will be talking for about 30 minutes each, maybe a bit longer for Uncle Eric, and there will be time for questions at the end, and we expect to finish at approximately 8:30. For those of you who wish to continue networking, we hope you will, there will be a bar open when we finish to the left here. And it's a delightful evening here at Wivenhoe Park. Feel free to go through the doors here into the gardens. We've got some chairs and tables out there with parasols, and feel free to continue networking either in this room or outside in the gardens if it's not too cold. Now to our speakers. The first is Group Managing Director of Martin & Co and Head of Compliance for Martin & Co, Eric Walker. Eric joined Martin & Co in September 2020. He's also held senior roles within Northwood and Belvoir, which are both franchise lettings businesses, and he's got over 30 years experience in sales, lettings and franchising. Eric is a member of the Lettings Industry Council, and he's got an immense network of contacts in our industry and is an expert in this field. Second up is our colleague Lucy Mitchell. Lucy's driven all the way from Devon to be with us today, 5-hour journey. Thank you for that, Lucy. Lucy is Senior Customer Development Manager of our insurance partners at HomeLet, who are the UK's leading tenant preferencing and specialist providers for the private rental sector. HomeLet provide rent guarantees for our landlord clients when our tenants sadly forget to pay their rent. Our final speaker is a very good personal friend of mine, Lisa Jari. And Liza has got 40 years experience in the property industry. She's currently working with a firm called Haywood Moon, who are a local firm of licensed conveyancers. Liza has run her own block management company in Colchester previously, and was formerly a director of a local firm called PMS Leasehold Management, who manage a lot of blocks in the Colchester area. So that's a brief introduction from me. Without further ado, I will hand over to Eric Walker to start the proceedings. You don't want to do it? I need to check.
Good evening, all. Oh, that was enthusiastic. Thank you. I hope you, Gary. Where have you put the clicker that you promised me? Can't take him anywhere. Now, I suggest if you're going to call the Samaritans, you do it now, because they tend to get very busy by the time I get to the end of this. And I'm not joking. I apologise in advance for what will be the most boring, miserable presentation you have ever witnessed. But if I do just say something slightly funny, please laugh. The reason is last time I spoke to this many people, no one laughed. It ruined the whole funeral. Right. This is who we are. This isn't me showing off about my brands and my colleagues' brands. This is me telling you how big we are. And the reason that's so important is because we cannot afford to get this wrong. In total, the group's got 155,000 properties and 900 offices. There is no bigger letting agent in the UK than us. And you've probably heard of a lot of these brands. No? Okay. Well, they're mostly crap apart from Martin & Co, aren't they? Any one of you clever people know who this is? Brilliant, sir. And do you remember what was in Pandora's box? Something pretty damn dreadful. She's mad. You heard she threatened to resign last week, but she didn't. Hey, do you know who this is? Polly Neat. She's the head of Shelter. Do not believe what you read on the internet about the Renters' Rights Bill, because most of it is wrong. Why? Google tends to bring up the most popular topic, not necessarily the right one, as I'm sure a lot of you more techie people will know. So do not Google things. I will tell you probably 98% of what's in the bill, subject to their lordship's amendments. So I want you to make notes and listen carefully, because I'm going to tell you the facts, and I know the facts because I've been heavily involved in this since the beginning, since it was the Renters Reform Bill. And I'll try and do it as quickly as I can, because Gary said I've got half an hour. Right, a little bit about what I do, quickly. I'm on the Letting Industry Council, the Lettings Advisory Board. I'm chair of the Property Redress Scheme, the Ministry of Housing, Government and Local Communities Advisory Panel, and Trading Standards Advisory Member, who don't like me very much, but they don't have a sense of humour, that's why they're Trading Standards officers. Do we have any lawyers in here? Good, because I hate lawyers. If they were always right, you wouldn't need two in an argument, would you? So, anyone here worried about the Renters' Rights Bill? Okay, be honest. And I can tell you now, you can ask me anything, as long as it's not geography. I'm crap at geography. You can ask me any question you like, and I will answer it for you. So you know Section 21 is history. Does that bother anyone? It won't make any difference. How do I know that? How can a fat enthusiastic amateur say this? Because we've been through this in Scotland since 2017. Hasn't changed a thing. You will still have grounds. In fact, there's more grounds for getting your property back than there were. All right? Section 21 has its problems. So no more Section 21 notices. You asked me a question earlier about giving notice halfway through a tenancy. There is no such thing as halfway through a tenancy anymore, because there will be no fixed terms. A tenancy is for life, apart from when they're not. And I'll tell you a few ways to get around it. There's going to be prosecution, civil penalties if you do something wrong. And these prosecutions will cost you, on average, to start, £7,000. Does anyone here self-manage? Oh, good luck with that. And rent repayment orders. Have you done a lot of homework on the Renters' Rights Bill? That's why I'm here. Ah, so you don't pay us to manage the property, but...
No, I do.
Oh, you do? That's okay. I'll forgive you.
Some I do, some I don't.
All right. No, it's fine. Gary just told me to pick on anyone who said that. And there will be no prospect of any form of fixed term. Full stop. Okay? Any questions on that, or is that very clear?
Is that as of now, or
No, when the bill actually starts. Okay? But we'll come on to that. You haven't been peeking at my slides, have you? Yes and no. I'll come on to that. It's a really good question. Thank you. So, Has anyone here ever evicted a tenant using Section 21? And how was it? It was awful. Why was it awful?
It was really difficult to get her out. She was really difficult.
And you used Form N5B?
I have no idea. Martin Co sorted it out for me.
Give this lady a microphone. So you have to fill out Form... Thanks, Auntie. You have to fill out Form N5B, which is quite complicated. And then on page 20 of Form N5B, I'm sorry, this is all in my head. It's really boring, isn't it? But I'm fun at dinner parties. That is what you have to submit to the judge. If any of those things are missing, it gets thrown out of court. All right? So it's Form N5B, page 20. And it is such a pain, and judges are pains as well. All that goes. You won't have to do that anymore. The only thing you'll have to prove is that you protected the deposit. Isn't that good? So life becomes a little bit easier in terms of documentation. There are restrictions. You can't have assured short-hold tenancies anymore. So if you're, and we have a lease expert here, if a lease says you must use an AST, you don't have to, because statute will override that contract. Mortgages, mortgage brokers, God. They can't specify that you must use an assured short-hold tenancy anymore. Any such requirement becomes invalid. Anyone who says you must hand the property back with vacant possession is no longer binding. Has anyone heard of these rent guarantee companies? Or rent to rent? Okay, we'll come on to that in a sec, like now. So, rent to rent companies are going to find it very difficult to operate. That's where somebody called a means tenant rents a property from the landlord and then sublets it out. They'll never get the property back because they have no grounds to get it back because they don't own it. Northwood, a company I used to run, do rent to rent, but I have solved that problem for them already because of the Scotland thing. Rent payment, God. Who takes rent in advance? You won't be able to anymore. No rent in advance more than 1 calendar month. And I'm going to shock you with this, but my lovely Lucy friend will give you the answer to how to protect yourself later. You ready for this one? You cannot take even 1 month's rent until the contract, the tenancy agreement, is executed. Okay? Otherwise you'll be fined 7 grand. If the tenant refuses to sign the tenancy agreement, you're fine. But if you sign it and execute it, and the tenant doesn't pay the month's rent, you can't stop them from moving in. Oh, it may be ridiculous, but this is government. Well, didn't you believe me? Once the contract's executed, if the tenant then fails to pay you the 1 month's rent, technically you cannot withhold the keys. Otherwise, it would be a breach of Schedule 2 of the 1977 Protection from Eviction Act.
It's a vicious circle. You can't take the money before.
No. Hey, listen, who voted Labour? Don't answer that. 1872 Secret Ballot Act. However, I have a solution to this, which I'm not going to tell you because it's commercially sensitive, but I do have a solution to it. But technically, you could have a tenant who moves in arrears. Now, in reality, it's probably not going to happen, but just so you know. Any of you who take rent in advance before this becomes enforced in law, you won't have to give the rent back, because a few people have been worried about that. Tenant notice. Do you know how much notice a tenant has to give you to end a fixed term tenancy? A tenant doesn't have to give you any notice to end a fixed term tenancy. All right? And I love this phrase so much. I love this phrase, and I'm never going to be able to use it again. The tenancy expires with the natural effluxion of time. Isn't it beautiful? It's also history. So the tenants will have to give you 2 months' notice to end a tenancy, right? Going forward into the Renters' Rights Bill. But, and this answers your question over there, sir, about minimum length, it has to be in line with rental payment periods. So if they give it on day one, it won't take effect till the end of the first month and then 2 months. So effectively, you'll get a minimum of a 3-month tenancy. Does that make sense to everyone? So common law suggests notice must expire at the end of a rental period. I will tell you that in Scotland, where they've had this, it hasn't made a blind bit of difference. No tenant wants to move in, pay a deposit, pay for Sky TV, pay for removals and everything else, and then move out again. And I think it's actually quite a good rule, because if you don't do what you promised to do in the property and the tenant moves in and it's horrible, why should they have to stay? Have you ever thought of it like that? I know you're landlords, but I've seen some horror stories. They weren't in Colchester though. I love this bit. Means of notice cannot be specified. It can be written. It can be text. It can be WhatsApp. It can be anything as long as it's written. But you can specify who it's served upon. You can specify agent. You can specify landlord. Does that make sense? Now, this is the good thing. This is where we start to find the little cracks in what you can do. So, notice by one tenant is binding on all. Now, this is really good. So if you've got 3 tenants, you don't like them, find the one who's the poorest, bung them £1,000 and say, give notice. And then you tell the others to bugger off. It's awesome, isn't it? Thank you, government. I've got some more. But do you like that one? Notices. So from now on, you'll only be able to issue Section 8 notices. Never, has anyone done a Section 8 notice yourself? Don't. One letter, punctuation mark wrong, you'll get kicked out of court. Always use a lawyer, and if you take out the amazing policy that we've got with the home let guys, that'll be done for you, won't it? At no additional charge. Most notice periods have now doubled. Excuse me, I'm jolly hot. Oh, I know. Wait till the next layer. Who shouted, please don't? Most Section 8 notice periods have doubled. I won't go through what they are because I'm sure you all know what doubled means. No fault grounds are now 4 months. So anything that isn't a mandatory ground, anything that is, where the tenant's done something wrong, is now 4 months. You have to give 4 weeks' notice if the tenant's in rent arrears. And under the Renters Reform Bill, how much in arrears do they have to be? Ah, brilliant. Have you been reading up on this? Was the 3 months a guess? I probably did. Yep. ASB, antisocial behaviour, that hasn't changed, but a court won't grant possession for 14 days. Rent arrears, as I said, notice periods have doubled. It's now 4 weeks before you can serve notice. But worse than that, we'll come on to worse than that. Grounds 10 and 11 are the same, which is the tenant was in arrears when the notice was served and the tenant was persistently in arrears. They're discretionary grounds, so the judge doesn't have to grant possession. But ground 8, the judge does. The only difference is now they have to be 3 months in arrears before you can serve 4 weeks' notice, which obviously makes 4 months before you can apply to a court, which will take you about 6 months to get a court date. So you're looking at 1 year before you get to court. Not with us. This is why Martin and Co have done this deal with our friends at Homeless and Let Alliance. We can solve your problems. You won't have to worry. You won't care. Okay? Yeah, we just did that, didn't we? Now, grounds for regaining a property. ground one, forgive the Harry Potter-like comments in a minute, but letting to a close family member. And in fact, the law lists people who are deemed close family members, and that includes the landlord. They also mention that a close family member can also be a half-blood family member. New ground 1A is where you want to sell the property. Now, again, I'm going to give you a couple of bits of good advice. Never tell a lawyer I've told you this, because they want to charge you thousands for this bit of genius. When, firstly, a tenant is entitled to 12 months living in the property before you can get them out, all right? But you can serve notice at 8 months, because 8 plus 4 months notice is 12. Genius. If when the bill comes in, they've already been in there 6 months, then you can serve notice 2 months later, because they've already had 6 months. So what they've already been living in there for counts towards the total. Is that clear? The other clever thing is that if you put the property on the market, and you'll have to, because there will be checks done, and you don't sell it, you can't let it for 12 months following the expiry of the notice. So, Eric's top tip: don't serve a notice. Give them some money and tell them to piss off. Because the law is very clear. There's a 12-month moratorium from the expiry of the notice. If you don't serve one, you can tell them to go away and you can relet the property. Does that all make sense, even if it wasn't very gentlemanly? Michael Gove wanted to do 6 months, but Mad Angela Rayner, oh no. Again, not only will you get a £7,000 fine if you breach it or are seen to breach it, but you'll also get what's called a rent repayment order, which used to be 12 months. It's been put up till 24 months by this government. Seriously, you couldn't make it up, could you? Which means you've got to refund 2 years' rent. And the restricted period starts, as I said, from the expiry of the notice, which is end of the 4 months' notice. Any questions on all that? Now, don't try and get around it, because I was actually sitting in Rightmove's head office in Soho Square when Trading Standards phoned up and asked for a copy of a series of adverts. Luckily, it was for one of my offices, so we managed to corrupt them. But I don't mean we bribed them, I mean we just deleted them. Rent increases. I'm going to whiz through this, because those of you sensible enough to use Gary don't need to worry about it. But the only way you can increase rent is by way of a Section 13 notice, which on the government website is a prescribed form, form number 4A. There is no other legitimate way of putting up the rent. You will be able to increase it to market rent. Another top tip: do not discuss rent with the tenant. Just put it up to the maximum market rent, because if you agree with the tenant, you'll do, say, £100 discount, and the tenant goes, "Oh, you're so kind, thank you," and you fill out Form 13 and he can then dispute it. All right, so do the full amount, and then you can discuss it with your tenant when he cries down the phone saying, "How am I going to feed my kids?" Oh, that was lucky. So any other structure will incur you a £7,000 fine. We've just done that bit. Now, again, you'll have to give people 2 months' notice that their rent is going up. Yes, sir? Yeah. Well, you can do what you like. But, I mean, firstly, thank you for admitting you've got a tenant as a friend. But the thing here is, no, you can't. Because, well, you can, but the trouble is, if you say to your friendly tenant at the end of the garden, "Hey, listen, I want to put the rent up £500," and he says, "I can't afford that, but I can afford 2," And guess what? You say, okay, 200 is fine. He can still appeal it. That's the danger. But of course you can. There's nothing to stop you, but it's not the best thing to do. The tribunal will set the new rent. In a change to tribunals, they can't offer more than the current increase that you've offered, but they can reduce it. Now, it'll take you 7 months to get to tribunal, and the rent will go up on the date of the tribunal hearing, not on the 1-year anniversary of the tenancy. This is not rent control. A famous Swedish economist said, the best way to destroy a city other than bombing is rent control. Now, we had rent controls in Scotland, as you will all know, and rents have gone up in Scotland more than anywhere else in the country because it was such a mess. Does anyone here rent to students? Yes? Okay. No advance rent. How will you deal with people from overseas? Chinese tenants. I think it's tacit discrimination, and we've been fighting very hard to get this changed. There's no exemption. You will have ground 4A, which is a student tenancy ground where you can serve them notice, but it must expire between June the 1st and September the 30th. We want students to have fixed term tenancies reinstated. And we've got a few of their lordships on side, but it ain't going to happen. The tenancy must be signed not more than 6 months in advance of the commencement date. And it cannot be used in any property that isn't an HMO. So if you've got a couple, Mr. and Mrs., whatever the couple is, who rent a small flat, they will be nothing to do with student tenancies because it's not an HMO. Does that all make sense to you? I won't dwell on it. We're going to have to provide written terms. So current tenancy agreements will continue when this becomes law. It just means that anything that contradicts the Renters' Rights Bill will cease to exist in that tenancy. So where it says, for example, a fixed term of 12 months, won't apply anymore. But you'll have to provide tenants with written terms. We do not know what they'll look like, but we will have them ready for Martin & Co. so they can give them to you to serve upon your tenants. Failure to do so will be, guess what? Usual fines. And by the way, that's first offence, £7,000. Second offence is up to 40. In Wales, they produce written terms, and I love this. Day before Rent Smart Wales went live, the government sent us an email saying, by the way, you know our written terms, you can't use them. What? But this is your model tenancy. Yeah, but the written terms only apply to our model tenancy agreement, not your tenancy agreement. So I had a very late night rewriting. This must be served before the tenancy starts, or if it's already started, within a month. Again, boring penalties. And again, rent repayment orders. I'm trying to speed up a bit because I'm going to be a bit late. Is that all right, Gary? Whew. I changed the original word to nonsense. This is a subject that makes me jolly cross, and I've done this presentation a few times, and this makes me really cross. Rental bidding. Now, I'm confused about this, I'll be honest, and I'll be grateful for anyone's input. So all adverts and offers must specify the rent. Yeah, it's called material information. It's been the law since 2008 under the Consumer Protection Regulations. But anyway, government have decided to put in another piece of law. You cannot accept an amount over the advertised rent. So guess what's going to happen to rents? They're all going to go up. I like the way we had a mime over there. That was brilliant. A little bit of creative dance in that corner. So rents will go up. Now, when I was an agent, or as an agent, the Ombudsman's Code of Practice and the Estate Agents Act says we are obliged to put forward every offer. So what do? Say to a landlord, hey, we had an offer £100 more, but you can't take it. Does anyone remember Bullseye? Look at what you could have won. And this is actually going to happen. So, who's responsible for overbidding? It's the tenants. It's not the landlords. Landlords generally, despite what people think, are not greedy. They just want a good tenant, don't they? You know, they're not necessarily after the highest price. So all the government are doing is driving up rents. Who's worried about pets in flats? Okay, why?
I've had carpets and stuff ruined by a pet, a tenant.
Okay. Yeah, you're not going to have much of a choice. Well, but you will, and I'll tell you the ways around this. Don't quote me. Oh, bloody hell, he's videoing. Are you videoing for the DPS? If you say no, and they get a dog anyway, what are you going to do about it? You can't do anything. So what do? You agree to it on your terms. So you tell them they have to have pet damage insurance. I have to emphasise the word damage because I got into trouble last time. Because I said pet insurance and it sounded like if the dog gets run over, they'll fix it. So pet damage insurance. Now the reason you insist upon it is so you're protected. Simple as that. If you say no and they do what my daughter's just done and take the dog anyway, but there again, I'm a guarantor. Shit, I didn't think of that. You can't unreasonably withhold permission to have a pet. But, and this is a good thing, you can say the property is unsuitable for pets. Anyone got a flat? Right. If you've got a flat, let's say a small flat on the 3rd floor, you can say unsuitable for pets. I have no problem with that. Okay? Does anyone suffer allergies? Well, I suffered anaphylactic shock twice due to a cat, which was my evil ex-wife Voldemort's cat, that she had enticed onto my pillow when I was out. Anyway, I won't bore you with that story. It's dead now. The cat, not my ex-wife. Whoops, hang on. We've gone slightly mad there. Forgive this slide, don't they? So you can advertise the property is unsuitable for pets. Allergies are a really good one. Also, if you've got a leasehold flat and your superior lease says no pets, you don't have to have a pet. And why is that? Because, as our legal expert will tell you, it's outside the Housing Act. It's a different type of legislation, isn't it? So if it says no pets, you don't have to have a pet, and that would be a reasonable excuse. You will say yes to a tenant rather than risk damage, because you can make the tenant pay for your pet's damage insurance. Oh yeah.
So you can put that in and they have to buy that.
Yeah. But why would you? You just pay for the insurance and pass the cost on to the tenant. Never let your tenant pay for it, because guess what they'll do? They'll cancel it. So have a think about that, and you can pass the cost on.
What, just by increasing the rate?
Yep. Yep. Yes. But you can't make profit on it. In fact, the government are changing the 2019 Tenant Fees Act to allow you to charge a tenant for pet insurance. And I will be honest, I told them at the time, this is the way to stop tenants having pets. They said, oh, we know what we're doing. Now they're changing it. And any restriction in your existing insurance policy will continue until renewal, at which point it will cease to exist. Does that all make sense to you? Is it a little bit better than you thought? See, that's why I'm here. You're all going to have to join a landlord redress scheme, like the Ombudsman. This is the most stupid idea, but you're going to have to, whether you like it or not. If you own a property, husband, wife, joint names, company, you have to join 4 times. You have to join for each legal entity in which a property is held. Don't worry, we will help you with all this at a very modest cost, I'm sure. You can't market a property without membership of a redress scheme, or you'll be fined £7,000. There may be more than one scheme, but there isn't. And then they can expel you from being a landlord. They also want to have a rogue landlords database. Yeah, how does that work with data protection? I don't know. You've heard about the regulation of property agents, ROPA, which we've been campaigning for. I asked government, so what's happening with ROPA? And the reply was, what's ROPA? I know, this is our government. So there'll be a PRS database. We can take care of this for you because we're best placed to do it, which will have all the information you need about the property, like gas safety certificates, ICRs. Got to be careful with that because it spells Eric in the other order. Electrical certificates. Every certificate you need will have to go on this, and they will charge you for it. We won't. We will help you keep it right. Civil penalties, yeah. You can't market a property until you're on the database. And this is going to be like shooting fish in a barrel for the local authority, isn't it? Because they'll look up a property, and if you haven't done this, they're going to come after you. So agents can charge to register landlords or not, depending on how nice you are to Gary. Oh, sorry. Does anyone know what AWAB's law is? Well, I'm going to just very briefly tell you, a little boy died because of mould and fungus, and it was in social housing. All right, you never hear about people really dying in private rented sector, the things you people look after. It was social housing. So they brought in AWAB's law, which I wholeheartedly endorse. Just to get this correct, you have 7 days to commission a written report into the cause of the damp and mould, and you have a further 14 days to commence works. Now, any of you more erudite people will know that identifying a source of damp ain't easy, is it? There can be multiple sources, it's very difficult, but if you don't comply, you'll be in hot water, all right? And the health safety rating system, just Google it, look it up. It's on the government website, teach yourselves. It just identifies different categories of risk. Is that all clear to you? You can ask another.
Hello. If mould has been identified, in my case it was a leak from the house next door, my renters are holders, I think I use that expression, didn't know anything for ages and stuff, got it addressed by the insurance company as quickly as I could, but the renters delayed the action, the repair action, because they couldn't be made available.
Who couldn't be made available?
They couldn't be made available.
What, the tenants?
Yes, and they tried to prevent me from entering.
That's great. It's a really good question. We get this a lot. All you need to do in future is inform the local housing authority, and that'll be your defence. Does that make sense? Yes, the landlady over there had a tenant who wouldn't allow contractors' work to go into the property to do the work, all right? Which is a common, we get this a lot with gas safety inspections. Trading standards will have far-reaching powers. Colchester's trading standards could actually walk into an office in Devon, seize files, seize computers. They can enter without a warrant. Powers to request documents. Now, my local trading standards officer, I had a beer with him in the golf club the other day, and I told him about an agent who was being very naughty, and he said, I don't care. I care about dodgy vodka and bent MOTs. I don't give a flying fig about Jones and Partners sticker in a window. All right. Whereas my friend Alexandra Cosgrove, who is very scary because she's extremely pretty, like a Venus flytrap, and then kills you. Alex got stuck in Spain during COVID, so sat on a laptop finding agents at the rate of 150 grand a week because of their websites. She's got a huge team. They can enter your property without a warrant, can do what they like. So we've talked about agents' fees. Commencement, 14th of May will be the end of, we believe, the consultation period, where their lordship's amendments will go to the Commons, and where they will reject, the Commons will reject every single amendment because they've got a 66% majority. There is a possibility that there could be one or two changes, maybe advance rent, maybe a change to students, but there is no appetite to amend this. What I will tell you that no one else seems to know, outside a small circle in the industry, is there'll be another renters' rights bill along in 2028 to fix all the holes in the current one. Section 21 will end immediately, not when they get royal assent, but when it's enacted. So there'll probably be a 2-month transition period. All right? If you have served Section 21 prior to the enactment date, it will still be valid. All right, just think about that. And it will remain valid from 6 months after service. So make sure you get it right. Is that clear? So any notices served before enactment will remain valid. Any fixed term tenancy will immediately end, and it will then become monthly periodic. This is true. This is written in the regulation. Everything else will become ready, be implemented when ready. Now, I've actually had a glimpse of the landlord database, and it's quite advanced, and it's crap. Honestly, you couldn't make it up, could you? The long stop date, we believe this will become law, is October. There is a small group of people who think it might even become January. Matthew Pennycook, who lives the road opposite me, crosses it quite a lot when I'm out. Matthew Pennycook, and I did actually call him Matthew Pennycock, but Matthew Pennycook initially said he wanted it in place in the summer, and I challenged him on this, and he said, no, I said royal assent. No, you didn't. So it's now going to be probably October. Finally, really, the great landlord sell-off is a bit of a myth. 11% of landlords are putting their properties on the market, of which 40% of that 11% are putting them back on the rentals market. There is a changing landlord profile. We're getting a few more portfolio landlords. We're getting a lot of investors buying our properties, a lot. So it's a change in profile. But also, one of my mates came up to me the other day and said, I'm thinking of selling my property. And he thinks he's really clever. He's the Martin Lewis of Chislehurst. He said, Eric, I've worked it out. I'm only getting a 4% yield. I said, yeah, I know that, Nige. I said, but how much did you buy your house for? Or that house for? He said, 250 grand. He said, it's worth 400 now. That's called capital growth. And take that into account when looking at your properties. Still, anyone want to self-manage? You do? Right. Do you think it's cheaper? Right. Well, good luck. You can still, no, I mean it sincerely. You can still buy your rent and legal protection policy through Gary, though. Worth having. Why not pay like I don't know how much it's going to be, but like a week's rent, which protects you for the next 51, or more than that even. So just think about it. I'm not here to try and get business for Gary. That's what he's here for. And finally, any questions welcome? Does anyone have any questions, or did you find that all useful? Good. That's what I'm here for. Anyway.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for your brief patience there where we just do some IT bit, you know how it is. I'm Lucy, I am from Home Let Alliance. We're the partners for Martin & Go and the Property Franchise Group. Before I dive in, I want to ask you a question. How are you all feeling after that? Heckle me, come on, tell me how you're feeling. Bit nervous? He seems to have that effect on people, but let's not hold it against him. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the legislation, but how kind of it affects the relationship that we have with Martin & Co. So what we're doing is a solution to make sure that we're supporting Martin & Co, more importantly you guys, so you can continue to get a return on your investment. Before we go into what the solution is that we are going to be putting forward to protect all of you, I've got a further question. We spoke a little bit more about landlord's profile and the fact it's changing and the legislation is going to be changing. How many of us actually think about tenant profiles and how much the tenant generation has changed over the last 30 years? No? So I'll always start with a little story that we had a couple of years back where a lot of you would have probably had tricky conversations with your tenants or with Martin & Co. And it was furlough. Now, when furlough happened, we've got a really big rent guarantee book here at Home Let Alliance. And what do you think happened when we went into lockdown? Stop selling? We had a massive influx of claims into our rent guarantee policy. Why does everybody think that was? Tenants stopped paying? It wasn't because tenants stopped paying. Well, not that they actually stopped paying, but what we found was there is a threat of not paying. And the reason that that threat was given is because it was in the press massively. Your landlord gets 3 months mortgage holiday. Do you remember that? The media went ravenous on it. Universities actually sent communications to their students. And what do the students do, or the tenants do? They utilise the tools at their disposal to benefit themselves. So when they tried to put in a claim, we would say to them, well, what's the situation with your tenant? Is it that they've lost their job as a result of the going into lockdown? No, they're on furlough. Great, so they're still getting 80% of their salary and they're not having to go to the pub and spend money. So how come they don't have enough money to support with their rent? Okay, those claims soon started to whittle down because the realisation was we had a couple of chances. That is not going to change with the new legislation at their disposal. Tenants aren't bad people, but they will try and utilise the tools that are available to them. So what we need to do is make sure that we protect you guys, we educate you about what's to come, but we put the tools in place to make sure you've got the best possible chance of getting a return on your investment. So if you've never heard of Home Let or Let Alliance, which I hope you all have, FYI, we do referencing and rent guarantee. So when you're going to put a tenant in situ, we do the referencing, the due diligence to make sure they can afford that rent, but also we will offer rent guarantee insurance off the back of it. What's the most common reason for a tenant going into arrears? Anybody know? Would there be any louder if I said there was a prize for this question?
Redundancy.
Yes, absolutely. So change of circumstance, so loss of job, change of relationship status or relationship breakdown. So these things aren't foreseen. Okay, you might have had a tenant in situ for the last 5 years, brilliant tenant, really, really cooperative when it comes to any time you've had engagement with them. Unfortunately, when these things happen, tenants tend to bury their head now. We're not, as the generation we're in now, we're less social. We're less confident engaging socially, okay? When things are good, it might be okay. When things go bad, what we tend to find is a pattern of tenants tend to bury their head. So we do circa about 1 million references a year. That gives you an idea of our sheer volume and size. Our rent guarantee book. Anybody want to have a guess what the rent guarantee book annually our rents extend to? No? £1.5 billion in annualised rent. So I know what you're thinking, how did I have time to spend 5 hours driving here from Devon, right? However, with these numbers, the reason that we partner with Marston & Co and Property Franchise Group is because we've got data on our side. So what we can do is we can analyse data sets. So we can use our rent guarantee book to look at where there are arrears, the common patterns of arrears, and we can go back and look at our referencing to make sure it's fit for purpose, given the innovation in our generation. So are we looking at the right areas? Are we doing the proper due diligence? Are we keeping you guys safe? Yes, situations happening like change of circumstance. We don't have a crystal ball. But what we need to do is we've got the best possible chance of putting the right tenant in the right property from the offset to keep you protected. So now I'm just going to show you a recording, if I can actually get this to work. Has anybody ever altered a bank statement? Whatever you say, there's no police on the other side of this drawer. Do not worry, I will not hold you accountable. Now, say for example, I'm a tenant, I'm not a bad tenant, don't hear what Eric says, and I have been in a property for 5 years, okay? Unfortunately, my landlord wants to sell the property, and I then look on the open market because I've got need to put my family and everything in a house. Unfortunately, Section 21's been served on me. I look at the open market and think, actually, the rents have gone up massive in 5 years. I can't afford this new rent, okay? They've got the pressure of housing their family. So they decide they're going to go online and they're going to fraudulently create a bank statement. They're not bad people. Remember, this is desperation we're talking about. So all I've got to do is go on Google, type in fraudulent bank statement. I think that's what I wrote. Search it, and I look at a range of different sites that I've got here. Even Etsy, which always blows my mind. They do crafts, it's very confusing anyway. Here, Template Lab. So this is an American site that actually pop up under different URLs. We can close them down. Obviously, we don't. You can see a lot of American bank statements here. We'll go down to the UK ones. The reason I know this statement so well is I actually bank with Nationwide. All I need to do is click into this statement, download it, export it into Word. A couple of some pop-ups pop up. I'm not online shopping, don't worry. And I've not had to put any of my personal information in. And I can export this into Word, remove the logo, and start amending the information. Now, question. Would anybody there think, if they received it, obviously in a PDF form, that that is a fraudulent bank statement? We need to make sure that we are doing our due diligence properly. We're not just looking at a bank statement thinking, oh, that looks all right. We are making sure that we're supporting you. Innovation is referencing in key. You probably have Gary and the team, they say we're doing a reference, and you probably think, great, standard industry reference. No. The reason that we team with them is because we go over and above when it comes to doing due diligence and making sure we're getting the right tenant at the right time to give you the best possible chance for successful tenancy. So we actually have AI. I know everyone is terrified of the word, or 2 letters AI. I know I'm sick of hearing it. But ultimately, it's a necessity of what we're doing. So any time that we have a reference that go to, we upload the documents to our AI portal. And not only can we see if the information has been altered, we can actually see what the original text was. We had one not so long ago where somebody looks like they had, I think, a healthy 6.5 grand in their current account. Guess actually what was in there? 12p. Don't worry, we didn't move them in. Now, AI is a massive investment, but ultimately a necessary one, as I said. But it's not the first thing that Home Let and Let Alliance are doing to make sure we're doing referencing properly. We're now looking at, we're the first provider on the market that uses the tenant full credit file. So no other provider, referencing provider, does this. We partner with Experian, and what we can do now is actually see what's going into their account and what's coming out in regards to credit commitments. 30 years ago, tenants, or generally the generation, they'd have savings in their account or they'd have money on under their mattresses, right? That's the most common thing. We don't do that anymore. People use credit. Their washing machine breaks down, their dishwasher breaks down, they go to Currys, they put it on a finance agreement. That's the new way we're doing referencing. Not only are we seeing what they're earning, so what's going into their account, we're looking at what their credit commitment's going out. It's all well and good me showing you a pay slip that says I earn 100k if 90k are going out in credit commitments. So we're doing due diligence properly. Now let's get on to the favourite topic of the night, the Renters' Rights Bill, right? So Eric's beautifully already told us about the main elements of the legislation which are going to obviously affect you guys. I'm going to talk a little bit about rent guarantee and also kind of trends in the market that we're seeing currently which are going to evolve once the new legislation comes in, okay? So we know that the once you serve a notice, it's going to go from 2 months to 3 months. We also know that the notice period is going to double to 4 weeks. Okay, so it's 4 months in total. Now, what you guys need to consider is, and again, Eric's already touched upon it, a tenant, you could sign a tenancy agreement, it could be executed. A tenant could never could move in and never pay their first month's rent, and so that means instantly you've got a tenant in situ for 4 months before you can actually go for possession, okay? And then obviously you've got the backlog in court proceedings, which we'll touch upon in a minute. Section 21 will be abolished. Now we use this, probably like a lot of the other letting agents, we use this at our disposal, okay? We know when it comes to a Section 8, sometimes it can be dependent on the judge that you have in front of you on the day. You know, some of them we found haven't granted possession based on pets being in the property because they've got dogs. Simple as that. Unfortunately, sometimes it is up to interpretation of that judge on the day. They're not going to render someone homeless just because they've got pets X, Y, Z. So what we will do in current world is we'll use Section 21 at our disposal. So a claim will be submitted from Martin and Co. We'll then serve a Section 8 for the breach, but if we can, we'll serve a Section 21 at the same time to make sure that we get vacant possession faster so it's more beneficial for all parties involved. We won't be able to do that moving forward. So let's talk about claims examples. So one that sticks in my head is that we had a court case last year. The tenant was in arrears, 2 months of arrears. Managing agent served notice, quite quickly got a court date. I think it was about 3 or 4 months, and the court date was on the 28th of October. Okay? That tenant turned up to that court hearing and said to the judge, I haven't been able to prepare a defence. Really? Known about this for a few months, but okay. What do you think the judge said back to the tenant? Bingo. He said that every person deserves their own defence, and they're going to adjourn this hearing and basically set it for the next available court date. Okay? So think about it, there was already 5 months arrears when that hearing happened. When do we think the next court date was appointed? 6 months, so we think it's already happened? I know I gave it away then, it's a bit naughty, wasn't it? June this year. In regards to what we're seeing from a time frame perspective, last year, over the whole of 2024, it was about 7.5 months it took from claim to come in to getting vacant possession of the property on average. Now again, remember we've got a rent guarantee book that extends to about 1.5 billion. So, you know, we've got a massive share in the market. It gives you a really good depiction of the flavour of what's going on in the court system, okay? The back end of last year, so the kind of final 6 month window of last year, that actually grew to 8.5 months. So we're already seeing an increase, and we're seeing that set to continue. So let's look at a case example of an average loss. If we look at the average rent in the UK, it's about 1,271. Tenant goes into arrears. This is based on 8.5 months, so the back end 6 months of last month. we know it is going to grow, and there's a couple of reasons for that, which I'll touch upon in a second. Professional cost 1,500, and obviously the stress and worry. You all beautiful people, you don't want any more fine lines, you want to sleep at night, right? It's about £11,668. That's financial, doesn't include the stress, which is obviously not tangible. Who can afford, in this room, to be in that situation? No. We need to make sure we protect you. And the reason the Property Franchise Group, Marketing & Co approached us, we're the biggest in this space, we're looking at things innovatively, and we have the backing to be able to support with products like this that are fit for purpose that other providers don't have on the market. So we'll talk about the features in a second. I just want to touch upon, because I've missed actually this slide. I've been on holiday, so I'm a bit ropey at this. I want to talk a little bit about why there's going to be backlog in court proceedings. Okay, so anybody want to have a guess before I go into it? So Section 21, when you serve a Section 21, you don't actually need a hearing, okay? Because Section 21s are going to be abolished, you will actually need to attend a hearing for any notice served, okay? That is going to mean that there is a further backlog. We can't rely on Section 21. Remember, the Section 21 we can use the Section 21, and based on the 7.5 months that we averaged last year, that was us utilising a Section 21 to actually get vacant possession sooner. Without having that Section 21, not being able to exercise it, it will inevitably grow, okay? Not only do we have to have a hearing on every single one, but Section 8, there will be some discretionary grounds that historically you would have been able to go, actually, I don't think the judge is probably going to grant me possession based on this discretionary grounds. That now you will have to go through discretionary grounds, that if they're not mandatory grounds, they will take longer for those hearings to be conducted. All of these things are going to contribute to that 8.5 months growing, okay? We are not sat in here trying to scare you. That's not the aim of this exercise. It's to talk to you about the reality of what's to come and to tell you about what we are going to be ultimately doing to make sure we support you moving forward. Now, the rent guarantee policy covers up to 15 months rent arrears. So even if it does grow from that 8.5 months by 2, 3, 4 months, that 15 months is going to be more sufficient to support you. What we'll also do is pay up to 3 months at 75%. So while you're re-advertising, you've got your vacant possession back, you've got your property, we know that it's going to take time to re-advertise and get the tenant that you want in situ. We're going to support you up to 3 months at 75%. We've got an in-house litigation team as well. So if you go to Direct Line tomorrow, or these other providers out there, what will happen usually is they will allocate it onto a third-party solicitor, okay? They'll do a bit of property law, a bit of environmental law, a bit of family law. They're not going to be specialists in this space. We are. We've got an in-house litigation team, so it's part of the same provider, and all we do day in, day out is this type of law, okay? So we're not only are we moving into a different space, remember, when the property, sorry, threw me off then, Gemma. When the new legislation comes in, a lot of the historic case law is going to be wiped. So we're going to need to build a profile of trends in court and what that looks like and advise you and your letting agents accordingly to make sure that you're going to have the best possible chance of getting possession. And that's what we do because we have an in-house litigation team. So we've got professional costs up to 100 grand. We've got in-house team that will ultimately support to make sure that you are going to get the best possible chance of getting the property back. Final words from our CEO. I'm not going to read it to you because I won't do it justice. But he talks a little bit about the fact of why we are the industry specialists, why we support 5,000 letting agents, and the fact that ultimately is getting consumer confidence back in this industry is ultimately the most important thing that we want to do as a business. Integrity is everything. Integrity as a landlord, integrity as an industry professional, integrity of making sure that we're putting the right tenants in the right property. But if things do go wrong, you are going to be ultimately protected to make sure you're going to get a return on your investment. Any questions?
So if I've already got a tenant but I don't have a scheme like this in place.
Mhm.
So could I borrow and retro responsibility?
Yep, so what Gary is going to be doing is a campaign as a result of this, where as any tenants that are in situ, as long as they don't have any arrears, it'll be a one-time offer that they can put all on cover. Get on, Gary. Any other questions? I will be here after, so if there's anyone that's a bit shy, come and find me. Oh,
I've got a very quick one.
go ahead.
Reference to the fraudulent bank statements.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting, when people actually do that. When you're taking copies of bank statements, presumably from Gary, etc., do you allow tenants to scan?
No.
Cool.
Tried to get me then, didn't you?
Because that will take out all the history.
Yeah,
Excellent.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're very stringent on what format it comes in. And you also have people that, again, you might not be interested in this, will try and save the PDF. They'll go into Paint, amend it, and then try and reconvert it to a PDF. We can see that through the history, so they can't outsmart us. Anyway, guys, thank you again for your time, and I'll pass you over.
Hi everybody, thanks very much indeed for coming this evening. Now I'm just going to talk to you a little bit from a conveyancing point of view and some of the frustrations that I have with my clients, especially leasehold owners. Now I just want to get a bit of a, see how many people actually know what is in their lease. Who has read their lease of the property that they own? Not very many of you. So you're sitting here listening to all of this about your rental, but what you haven't considered is your actual knowledge of the lease, what you can and you cannot do. So after you set to rent your property, you have to have the knowledge, or the landlord, so the tenancy company has to have the knowledge of what is in the lease. Otherwise, how can you possibly know what you can and cannot do with regard to the Renters Reform Act? So you need to check the covenants, you need to check the restrictions, and you need to ensure that you know whether or not you can have pets, whether or not you're allowed to do certain things at the property, insurance, etc., etc. Now, one of the most frustrating things that I come across is that when landlords are selling, and I send the forms, the property information form, the leasehold property information form, I ask them who the managing agent is, and I would say at least 80% of people do not know. They send me the forms back blank, and they say, well, you can find that out, can't you? No, I can't. I am here to do your legal work. I am not there, unfortunately, to educate you. So I say to people, go back, please, and read your lease. You need to dig out the service charge statements. You need to find out what your ground rent is. That is your starting point if you wish to sell your leasehold property. Unless you have done that, there isn't, in my opinion, much chance of being able to sell the property openly and with transparency as to what is in that lease. Now, what I did with Martin and Co a couple of years ago, because we were all finding it very frustrating with people putting their properties on the market, and then we would get a couple of months down the line, and lo and behold, the lender will not lend the money. So there's a couple of issues here. The first one is that at Hayward Moon, what we do is if you are buying a lease, for example, we will give you the lease report within about a week of receiving the documentation. We will not submit the searches, we will not raise the inquiries, because there is little point. If your ground rent is over £250 or £500 in London, you're going to struggle immediately in selling your property. You will struggle buying that leasehold property because there are so few lenders now that will actually look at that and take that into account as good security. So it's amazing, again, how many people come to me and they don't know what their ground rent is. They're set up a standing order, they're set up a direct debit. They do not know about the cap of £250. That's your starting point. Please dig out your leases and check what the ground rent is. Then please dig out your service charge statements. Dig out the budgets. Have a look at what you're paying for. The amount of people that I do the conveyancing process for and scrutinise the management pack, probably more than most leasehold conveyancers, because of my background in block management. When I thought I was going to save the world and change block management, that didn't work out very well, which is why I'm back at conveyancing. So you need to look at that statement. You need to check the costs. You need to know what you are paying. So what we did is that before these properties go on the market, you need to look at that, and you need, if you do not understand it and you do not know if you can sell your sell your property, is speak to Gary and ask him if he can put you in touch with me. I will do a lease review and I will tell you whether or not you can sell your property. There is no point putting it on the market, instructing a conveyancer, getting 90% of the way down the road, only to end up with you can't sell it. So that's your first issue. So I do a lot of these lease reviews. I send them out, and then I get an argument, but that's not right. Well, actually, it is right. Well, I'm going to put it on the market anyway. Okay, well, you've just wasted your money by asking me to do a lease review, which you're now ignoring. And they will then go off and try and sell their property, and again, they cannot do it. So I just think that in order to save yourself costs, whether you're buying or selling, you must look at that lease. You must know what you are owning. Again, another term I hear all the time, well, I don't live there. I don't know. It's not about the person that lives there. The lessee, the leaseholder, is the person that owns the flat. It is not the tenant. So please pick up your lease and become responsible for knowing what is in it. And I think by doing that, you will also find that you don't need to run and start selling your leasehold properties. I don't think there is any need to do that at the moment. If you do that, all you are doing probably is selling at a loss, because the ground rent may not be acceptable to lenders. There is no need. Look at the bigger picture. Often people will also come to me and say, right, I need to sell, you've done a leasehold, you've done a lease review, and you've told me I need to extend my lease, or I need to lower the ground rent. The other thing that it always catches people out is a tiny little clause in a 40, 50 page lease, which is forfeiture, the forfeiture clause, which means if you do not pay your service charges, they can basically forfeit the lease, they can take possession. The lenders don't like that. That's not good for their security, because they could have a mortgage on a property, you do not pay your service charges, and then the property can be repossessed. Now those are fairly easy things to rectify by way of deed of variation. The unfortunate thing is that especially the big landlords, this is now a licence to print money, basically, because they've realised that people can't buy and sell their flats if they have this clause in, and it will cost you an absolute fortune quite often to get that deed of variation put in place. There is one other thing to remember as well. If your ground rent is over £250, you can do a lease extension. You can extend your lease, and it will automatically drop the ground rent down to a peppercorn. Again, I have a lot of clients that say to me, this is what I would like to do. Can you start off the process, please? And I say, yes, no problem. Let's get the valuation done first. And it comes back with £25,000 premium. Oh, that's not good enough, they tell me. Well, the freeholder, if you think about it, they are losing out on that money each year. So you're going to have to pay a premium. But in the long term, it will pay off, because it will immediately add value to your property. You can stay renting it to your tenants, and you know that you've got your security of your property. So the other thing that a lot of people will not do, as I say, is the lease extension. That they just won't do it, and I don't know why, and I can't work out why. And if anybody could tell me why they don't want to extend their lease, and pay £10,000 to drop the rent to a peppercorn, then please do let me know. I would be very interested to hear after I finish speaking. I might just add, the other important thing is, if you are selling or buying a leasehold property, I'm not here to sell myself, I'm very busy, ask your conveyancer, how much experience do they have of leasehold conveyancing? It is so important. If you have a conveyancer on the other side of the transaction, or a conveyancer who is acting on your behalf, and they're not expert, you will struggle. You will really struggle, because they will go down avenues. Most conveyancers, what I call the factory conveyancers, have a set of standard questions. One of them is always exclude the forfeiture clause, enter into a deed of variation. Often it's not needed. If you don't have a conveyancer who is experienced in these matters, you will find that you'll just end up paying money out for no reason at all. So do question the conveyancer as to how much experience they have got before you instruct them. It is important. Do not go for the cheapest, because any leasehold or any conveyancer that's got expert leasehold knowledge will not be the cheapest. Simple as that. We put a lot of extra effort into learning the law. It is complex. It is totally different to freehold conveyancing. I get that a lot as well. Well, it's not a lot different, but instead of a transfer on a freehold, you've got a lease. It's very different. It is very, very different. So just be aware of that if you are buying or selling. The other point, of course, is to note that you think you might be getting a bargain. Oh, it's only got 70 years left on the lease, so I'm only going to pay £4.20 for that. So then I can make £57,000 when I go to sell it, because I'm going to extend the lease. Beware. The freeholder will not give you any valuation in respect of how much it is going to be to extend your lease. And this is another thing where the big landlords have found that they can charge carte blanche pretty much. There is a mechanism by working out what the value is, but they can increase that significantly by way of alleged admin charges and legal costs. So don't think you're grabbing yourself a bargain with a lease with only 50 years. As I say, look for a longer lease if you can, but before you do go to put an offer on a leasehold property with a very short lease, you must first find out who the landlord is, find out who the managing agents are. Managing agents, block management. This is another thing that I say to people. I'm not going to list them, but when I do ask to quote for a leasehold property, especially a first-time buyer, I say to them, just to let you know, the managing agent is this. Not managing agent as in Martin & Co. The management company is this particular company. Do not buy this property. Simple as that. But I love it, but I want it. Do not buy it. Do not buy it. You will never be able to have control of your service charges, and you will never be able to have transparency with certain companies. So do remember that block management is completely unregulated. There is guidance, but it is unregulated. There lies the problem. Now, coming towards the end of this now, the other thing that I want to urge people to do is, and again, I will be asked to look at a budget, asked to look at the service charge demand, and they say to me, well, I don't want to pay that. Have you been to any of the meetings? No. Okay. Have you challenged any of these costs on here? No, well, I've never looked at the budget before, I just pay it. Look at the budget. You would be surprised. You would be very surprised at the little things that you can find in that budget that don't need paying or have been inflated. Ask if there is any commission on the insurance, one example. But do not think that cheap service charges is the best option. It is not. It never ever is. It really isn't. That's not going to be the answer to your troubles. Because of all the health and safety legislation and the BSA Act, the Building Safety Act, your service charges will go up. If you buy now and it's a low service charge, it won't be for long. So do not base your investment on that alone. That's the other advice that I give you. So my story here is very simple. Dig your lease out when you get home, not necessarily when you get home, but at any point. Read your lease. They're usually between 20 and 60 pages. I've got it down to fine art because I know that probably 30 pages of it is nonsense. But the very basic things, look at your ground rent. Look at the renewal terms of the ground rent. See how often it doubles. Does it double? If it doubles, speak to somebody urgently. Lenders, less and less, usually one a day, one a week, they will stop lending on doubling ground rents. Be aware of that. It's a very, very important thing to know about now, and you can do something about it. Get to know all the other owners in the block. Don't be what I call an absent landlord. Don't just sit back. Speak to people and get them together, because you can bring change about for your block. You can save money with the right advice, but it will cost you money. It will cost you money to put these things right. So it will be worth it. If you are a landlord and an investor and you are in it for the long term, it will be worth it. So I urge you all, look at your leases, check the ground rent, look at the service charges, look at the budgets, and then you'll be amazed. I think probably 50% of you will come away and go, actually, I had no idea that my lease was so archaic. Finally, new build leases after 2022 don't have any of these issues. So if you really do have to get rid of a flat and sell a flat that you don't like the clauses in the lease, just go ahead and buy another one that was built after 2022. Problem solved. You can then still be a landlord and a lot of the problems will be solved, but don't necessarily jump off the market. It is not necessary. You won't save money. So that's all I have to say, really. It was just really to give you a few ideas of what you need to look at and that it is still worth being a landlord. Thank you very much, everybody. Is there any questions?
When you said a ground rent,
Yes.
£50, is that per month or per year?
Per year. Yeah, £250 per year. £500 in central London or in London. Yeah, yeah.
On a lease, picking up what Eric said earlier, on a leasehold property where there's a clause saying it can only be let on a tenancy,
Yes.
i.e. not being Airbnb,
Yeah.
but he was saying, well, that clause,
It will become void.
can it then be let as an Airbnb?
No. So that part of it, you will still have to.
Still have to be
Yeah.
tenancy of
Yeah.
some
It's
sort.
only the mention where it says it can only be let on an AST. So all that will happen is that the new legislation will just take over the words AST. So it just means it will have to be let under the new guidance. Yeah. Oh, that's all right.
How low should you let a lease go before you start worrying about renewing it?
85 years.
Right, so I've got 87.
Yeah.
So I'm okay for another 2 years.
Well, you say you're okay for another 2 years, but we don't know what's going to happen.
No.
Because the lenders, they'll basically say, they work it out on the term of your mortgage, if you had a mortgage. So if you're selling, term of the mortgage plus a certain amount of years. Some of them are still saying 70, some of them are saying 50. Yesterday it was announced by the Council of Mortgage Lenders, some of them have gone down to 30 plus the mortgage term. So
Is it a difficult process to extend?
it's not that difficult. No. It was, but now they have to offer it. They brought in the legislation, the Leasehold Reform Act, to be able to do that. I think that's it. No. Oh. That's all right.
This is probably too late. Years ago,
Yeah.
I was living abroad.
Right.
I was splitting my flat out.
Right.
The management changed hands. The guy retired.
Yes.
I paid that day.
Yes.
what he did, when he sold on to the new company, he didn't inform me the new company.
Yes.
And he didn't inform the new company that I was living abroad.
Right.
So they were sending me demands out.
That you weren't
That
receiving.
my tenant was getting, because he wasn't allowed to open my mail.
Mhm.
He was passing it on to the then agency who was keeping them.
Mhm.
Then when I came back to England, they passed me on all these things. Before I knew it, I got an email
Mhm.
panicking at the court date.
Yeah.
I've got to lose my. Well,
Yeah.
I managed to sort it out, but when I came back, I wanted to sue the agent, the management at the time. The solicitor said you can't.
You can't.
You can't do a thing about it because it's limited amount. We charge so much.
It's a limited amount, yeah, but also because the managing agents, they're unregulated. There is no right or wrong. You've got the RICS guidance and you've got the other things in place.
Totally spending.
Yeah.
So I make sure that I'm doing on and on now. Well, thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Liza.
Very welcome.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, should I have a raise hands for those of you who found the evening's presentations useful to your buy-to-let properties? Yeah. Another round of applause for each round three.
Oh gosh, don't even go there.
So we're here to protect your investments, and myself, I'm a landlord as well. My pensions advisor has always said to me that your rental properties should be the very last thing that you sell in retirement when you've run out of cash. So the reason for that is house prices, both for freehold and leasehold, have always gone up, and rents have certainly gone up considerably over the past few years. I've got my staff on hand here. You'll identify my staff because they'll have their badges on. If anybody's got any questions that you'd like to ask my team about the services that Martin & Co offer, we'll be on hand here afterwards. Behind the wall there where Alex is standing, there is a bar. It's hidden. We have a bar open here if people want to buy drinks here. Also, if you go out of the doors here to the left, the venue here has got an excellent restaurant with a bar on it there, and you can get drinks from the bar there. And to the front here, we've got some beautiful gardens. It's still very light outside. Anyone who wants to go and sit outside can do so, or you're very welcome to carry on networking here. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming on tonight. It's been a much bigger attendance than I ever expected. And thank you all, and we're here for your questions. Thank you for coming.